We were led into a spacious room, and without knowing why, the conversation began in a serious atmosphere. "We've been letting your son rest. These are the kids who were with him, right?" "Yes, it seems these three went to that place." "Is that so? Can you guys tell us where you went, what you did, what you saw, in as much detail as possible?" We were confused when he suddenly asked us to talk, but A and I managed to recount the events of that night in detail to the adults. However, when we mentioned the toothpick, the uncle asked, "What did you just say?" in a threatening voice. We were even more confused. What? You guys didn't move that, did you?" He leaned forward, shouting angrily as if he was about to grab us. Then Aoi stopped him and started to speak in a faint voice, like a mosquito's whine. In the center of the box, there should have been a small rod, arranged to represent a certain shape. "Did you touch it? Did you change its shape even slightly?" Yeah, we moved it. I think the shape was out of alignment too." "Can you remember who changed the shape? Not whether you touched it or not. Did you change the shape?" After A and I looked at each other, we told them it was B. Then the uncle leaned back, sighed, and said to B's mother, "Ma'am, your son is beyond help now, I'm afraid." I hadn't heard the details, but judging from his symptoms, it could be caused by other factors. "I didn't think he moved that thing." "No way. There must have been something more she wanted to say, but she seemed to swallow her words and hang her head for a while. We felt the same way, but couldn't say it out loud. What does he mean, B is beyond help? What are they talking about? Even though we wanted to ask, we couldn't voice out. Looking at the three of us, the uncle began to explain with a sigh. "Finally, we got to talk about what we had seen, commonly known as Saridara Saridara. In ancient times, Kankandarara. Depending on the age and status of the person who knows it, it seems to have various names such as Narujara, Narudara, Kankanjara, Kankandara. Nowadays, the most common name is simply Dara. In households like the one the uncle is from, which have a special lineage, it is known as Kankandara. It's almost a myth or a legend. People from a village that was troubled by a man-eating serpent requested an extermination from a family of shrine maidens who had been passing down the power of a god from generation to generation. The house that received the request sent a particularly powerful shrine maiden to exterminate the snake. While the villagers watched from the shadows, the maiden bravely fought the snake. However, she made a slight mistake and lost her lower half to the snake. Despite this, the maiden used various skills in a desperate attempt to protect the villagers. But the villagers, who had given up on winning, asked the snake to ensure the safety of the village in exchange for the maiden as a sacrifice. The snake, who was annoyed by the powerful shrine maiden, agreed to this. The villagers cut off her arms so the snake could eat her more easily, and the snake consumed the Daruma-like maiden. And so the villagers enjoyed a temporary peace. It was later revealed to be a plan devised by the maiden's family. There were 6 people in the family at the time. Soon, strange things started to happen. The snake disappeared one day, and in the village that should have been free of attackers, people began to die one after another. In the village, in the mountains, in the forest, every victim had lost an arm, either their right arm or left arm. 18 people died, including the 6 members of the Shrine Maiden's family. Only 4 survived. The uncle and Aoi explained alternately. I don't know when and where this story started, but that box gets moved to a new location and is complemented at regular intervals. The caretaker changes from time to time. You saw the family crest on the box, right? Those are the families who've provided places for the offerings. There's a meeting of people from families like ours to vet the caretakers, and they decide. Occasionally, there will be some fool who volunteers. No one other than the caretaker is told anything about the story of Kankandara. The area's residents are only told by the caretaker that there is a tail attached and who to go to if something happens. When they tell this, a representative from a family like ours is present, so the residents understand the significance of the tale. The current representative isn't from our family, but we were contacted urgently yesterday. Apparently, B's mom called a different place the day before yesterday. She took B to this house, and after a discussion, they decided to leave it to them. B's mom had already called them while we were at that place and had been somewhat told what was happening. Typically, it is moved to a mountain or a forest. As you saw, The 6 trees and ropes represent the villagers, the 6 rods represent the shrine maiden's family, and the jars in the corners represent the 4 survivors. The shape formed by the 6 rods represents the shrine maiden. Why this became the format, or when the box started looking like that, is likely unknown even to families like mine that know the tale. However, the most widely circulated theory is that the 4 survivors researched all they could to calm the hatred of the shrine maiden's family, and this was the unique format that resulted from it. The fence was apparently added by the caretaker at the time, with only the bells conforming to the tradition. Uncle. A few people in our family have performed exorcisms on Kankandara, and they all died suddenly within 2 or 3 years. And those who caused the incidents rarely survived. That's how dangerous this is. Until this point in the story, we 3 were clueless. All we could do was stare in dumbfounded surprise. Then the situation changed again. Miss, I hope you understand how serious the situation is. As I said earlier, if you hadn't moved the rod, there could have been a way out. But now I'm afraid there isn't. Please, isn't there something you can do? This is my responsibility. Please, I beg you. Bee's mom wouldn't back down. Even though there was no way she was to blame, she bowed her head and continued pleading, desperate to take responsibility. But she wasn't crying. She looked resigned. We want to help as much as you do, but if he saw that thing after moving the rod, you've seen it as well. The shrine maiden you saw had been eaten by the snake. You saw her lower half, didn't you? So you understand what that shape means, don't you? And I didn't know what he meant. Lower half? We were sure we had seen only her upper half. Lower half? You said we saw her upper half. Upon hearing this, the uncle and Aoi were shocked. Uncle, what are you talking about? You're the ones who moved that rod, right? If so, you must have seen her lower half. The woman who appeared in front of you had no lower half, did she? Then how many arms did she have? There were 6 arms, 3 on each side, but there was no lower half. A and I confirmed it with each other and answered. Suddenly, the uncle leaned again, getting in our faces. Are you sure? You're saying you didn't see her lower half? Yes. The old man turned back to Bee's mother, smiled, and said, Ma'am, there might be a way. At his words, not only Bee's mother, but also we held our breath and focused on him. They explained the meaning of his words. There are 2 actions that expose you to the grudge of the shrine maiden. What you must not do is change the shape representing the shrine maiden. What you must not see is the maiden's figure represented by that shape. In reality, it's over the moment the rod is moved. It's inevitable that you will see the figure of the maiden. But for some reason, you didn't see that. Since the actual person who moved it should see the same figure, if you didn't see it, that kid probably didn't either. What do you mean by didn't see? What we saw was, it does not change the fact that she is the shrine maiden. However, she is not Kankandara. She probably didn't have the intention to take your lives. Instead of appearing as Kankandara, she showed herself as a shrine maiden. That night's event was probably just a game to her. It seemed that the shrine maiden and Kankandara were the same entity, but also completely separate entities. If Kankandara hasn't come out, then what's attacking that kid right now is probably, as Aoi said, just a bit of mischief. It's going to take a long time, but if you leave it to us, we should be able to do something about it. For the first time, the tense atmosphere seemed to ease a bit. Just knowing that Bee might be saved was enough, and the expression on Bee's mother's face at this time was truly incredible. She looked relieved, like all her stress from worrying about Bee in these past several days had suddenly gone away. Seeing that, the old man and Aoi also relaxed and seemed like normal people all of a sudden. We'll officially take the kid in. I'll explain it to the mother later. As for the 2 of you, just let Aoi exercise you before you go home. From now on, be a little more careful not to be reckless. After discussing Bee a little more, his mother stayed and we were exercised before we left. Regulations of this house did not allow us to see Bee, so we did not know what they did. I don't know if it was treated as a transfer or if he remained in the school, but from then on we never saw him again. I heard that he was completely reformed and is now living somewhere properly. Bee's father didn't show his face once during the entire incident. I have no idea why. A and I were relatively quick to calm down. There were many reasons for this, but the biggest one was probably seeing Bee's mother. We also got some sequelae that she must have been the one having the hardest time. It made me reflect on what a mother can be. Since then, the parents in our homes began to slowly get involved more. Maybe because of this, we naturally stopped doing stupid things. What we learned was that the shrine maidens that gathered on a certain day were the families of the counselors. Kankandara, although recognized as dangerous, is like a sort of god. Apparently, the big snake was the god of the mountain or the forest or something. So once a year, they would perform kagura dance or chant prayers. Also, the sound we heard from the forest was because Kankandara seems to be kept free range inside the fence. But there's a kind of ceiling arrangement with the hexagon in the box, and apparently it hardly ever appears unless the shape of the bar or the hexagon is broken. The offering place is designated by some specific rules to a specific part of the mountain or forest, and the range is determined by detailed numbers. They seem unable to leave that area basically, but in the case of being surrounded with a fence or something, they sometimes stick to the outside like we saw. That's about all we knew. It seems to have been moved from where we were living. I haven't checked because I don't want to go there again, but since they started removing the fence almost a year later, it's probably somewhere else now.